Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuning in from. I am Carolina Milanesi, and this is the latest episode of TEQ. Today's discussion is a little bit of a departure from the usual topics that we discuss here about technology and society, D&I and sustainability, but is one that really gives you a bit of an insight on what to actually do for a living as an industry tech analyst. And one that's also focusing on how the IT decision maker landscape is changing. I've been an analyst for longer than I want to admit. I always say that. And in my mind, I have three roles. One as an advisor, first and foremost, as an internal influencer, and lastly, as an external influencer. What does it mean? It means that I provide companies, tech companies, with views, opinions, data, actionable advice to really shape their thinking, their products, and their business models. And I do that. As I do that, I influence stakeholders inside the organization and then outside the organization as well. Today, I have the privilege of having an amazing boss lady with me, somebody that I have admired from afar for a long time, and we have, I know, mutual admiration for what we do. She is a VP of Customer Experience and Operations at ARInsights. ARInsights is a company that provides solution to tech brands to reach and connect and engage with industry analysts in a very efficient and scalable way. And I'm going to let her explain this in layman terms in a minute. Crystal Golightly is her name, and she is responsible for really the if you like, the full life cycle of client development. And so she works very closely with tech brands to see what their needs are, where their business is going. She has an amazing experience in operations and CRM solutions, and takes a very unique approach to identifying business challenges and then crafting solutions that are really tailored to the specific customer. I am delighted to welcome Crystal to the conversation.
Hi, Carolina. It's so nice to join you. And I feel almost a little shy with that introduction, believe it or not.
I downplayed you, so you don't have to be shy.
Oh, that's so sweet. Believe it or not, ARInsights has been around for 20 years. And
Wow.
we've been building AR solutions for analyst relations professionals for that entire time. Yeah.
That's almost as long as I've been an analyst, which is kind of scary. But but I want you to explain so that people have the context exactly, what you do from an ARInsights perspective, from an organizational perspective, but then your role in talking to ITDMs and tech brands to see what their needs are.
Yeah, totally. So, in full transparency, we're not directly connected to the ITDM. I actually, and I'll get to this, recently found myself as an IT decision maker buyer. And it's what really got me thinking about that journey. But back to my current role and ARInsights. So, I work with, I think, the best of the best clients in the whole world. AR people are so special, so intelligent, and so thoughtful. I couldn't ask for a better area to be creating solutions for. And we get to be right in the middle of what is happening in tech, on top of being with the best people. So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
and just to qualify, I understand what you're saying, that you don't work directly with the ITDMs. You're working within, just so we explain to people. Normally, tech companies have a unit, have an office, which is analyst relations, and these are the people within the organization that basically connect the analyst with the stakeholders within the organization, whether it is ITDMs or marketing or product. to get their insights and advice.
Absolutely. And thank you. And Carolina, you just touched on the number one thing that we all have to answer in social events and holidays with our family, which is, what do you do for a living?
Yeah, my family still doesn't understand it, so it's okay. I
I'll
feel
tell
you.
you, even my friends that work in tech have no idea, which is also really funny, right?
Yeah, because normally the shorthand of that is like, "Oh, okay, you're doing PR." No,
No,
not
not
quite.
even. It's totally the other side of that, right? I oftentimes tell people analyst relations is oh gosh, here I go stumbling, right? It's like Thanksgiving dinner. Um but yeah, it's kind of like sales in a way, right? Without actually having a sales goal,
Yeah,
because it's building long relationships and making sure that information is being shared both ways that is mutually beneficial, right? And so
100%.
I think sometimes when I think about analyst relations like that, it kind of clicks a little bit, but then it doesn't. So
Well, I think as an analyst, so being one of the cats, I always say that an AR manager is a cat handler, because that's what we are. It's just like trying to get the analyst community, and you're absolutely right. It's all about relationship, right? Which is probably the only reason why I'm not so worried about AI coming into my space. But we are going to get to that in a
we will
moment.
get to AI, yeah, for sure.
Um, so I think you sit in a in a very privileged point view, advantage view of the industry because of your job. And if I look at the past 2 to 3 years, there's been so much change in enterprise, whether you're a small or you're a large enterprise. Change that was driven by technology changes and advancements, COVID, and the response to that. And companies have been on a spectrum, in my view, right? There have been companies that were just like trying to keep the lights on and trying to stay afloat and just responding to what was coming at them. And then there were companies that actually had the ability, whether because they had staff or they had, talent and funding, to really take advantage of the technology and the change and change their business model and their business outcomes. One thing that though is in common, in my view, across all of that spectrum is that organizations purchasing, the way that organization purchase tech has changed and is continuing to change. Do you feel the same in the conversations that you have?
Absolutely. Both as a vendor ourselves, working with the AR teams that are trying to make sure that they're aligned, and also as a buyer myself, right? I recently found myself in a situation where I was not thrilled with a vendor, and so I decided to look around, right? And I'll tell you, again, was a really big turning point for me in thinking about the enterprise buyer's journey. And so, what did I initially do? I got pissed off, and I immediately went to Google and different AI tools to understand the landscape of what I was trying to buy. And I really wanted to do an initial view of what was available for me, or what was available just generally, very broadly. And then I decided to go into Architects Premium content. This is not a plug, but it is what I did to see what the analysts were saying. So I bring up this point because then I started thinking, like, is this a generational thing? Right? Is this um is this a product of what you were saying, the change in technology and things moving really fast? What is this that caused me to do this primary search first to understand and then refer to the analyst? And it was because I wanted to have an understanding of, if I do get to talk to an analyst, or I do see, what's publicly available, what analysts are writing about vendors, I had a context, right? And so then I started asking some friends that are in my demographic about, like, how do they approach buying decisions? And it was very similar. And I got to say, big shout out to Carolina, you and other analysts that are independent, because what you make publicly available is so helpful. And then that you're coming in with at least 10% more information than you started with. And that can really help frame the questions that you need to ask and who you align with. And so I think that part of the sort of the changing landscape is really important. And again, at first I thought, like, oh, this must be a generational thing, like the Yelpifying of things,
Yeah.
and you see that with even all the peer review sites. There's a number of them that are available these days where you can see what other users are saying about a product. But that only takes you so far, right? Because you don't know their situation and all of
Correct.
that. But then I was having a conversation, and it may have been with you or maybe another analyst that said, well, is it really generational, or is it because the technology is changing the way that we navigate things? And so
Interesting.
it was really interesting sort of thought sort of exercise that I had. And there's no way I think you can decouple any of it, right? It's so many influences as a buyer, as a person that is thinking about the buyer's journey, and who you strategically align yourself to tell those stories and meet the buyer wherever they are.
Yeah. But I do think that, it is interesting, because this was my next question about generational differences. The workforce is as diverse as it's ever been, right? We have 5 different generations within the workforce today. And I do think that as ITDMs become younger, their thinking, their product, their personal experience is going to come into the process. And it's fascinating, because as I was listening to you speaking, like, your journey is no different than, if you think about it, than your journey as a consumer, right? So forget work.
Yes.
Like, as a consumer, the way that you go about, finding your plumber, or deciding what computer you're going to buy for yourself, is the same thing. And you go to, it's not an analyst, but you might go to any Yelp or any or whatever website that you want to use. You go to YouTube for tech. There's so many influencers now, on creators on YouTube, that provide not just reviews, but full understanding and ideas around technology. So it's not just unboxing anymore. It's really, day in the life, is about their opinion from a business model perspective. That, we're becoming richer in the kind of information that we are finding. But I personally think that generation has a lot to do with it.
You may be right. I mean, but I've also seen people in a generation above me that take similar tactics as well. So that's why I'm like, it was a really nice thought exercise about what are the influences that are really impacting you. And actually thinking about it now, the fact that we have to spend hours explaining our industry, our jobs, it just goes to show you that the generations before me may have known that there are something called analysts and advisors and consultants that can help navigate, these unknown territories, versus, like me, I literally have spent about 13 years in the analyst world. And my first thought wasn't go to the
Good.
research, right? And so it just goes to show you that your generational sort of primary mode has a huge impact on the way we think about things. And in my fury against this vendor, I actually went to YouTube and I was looking for demos to see, what the user experience was
right.
in different software, because
Yeah.
user experience is so important these days. So I thought it was interesting that you brought up.
100%. Yeah, but I think your point about technology is also extremely valid, because I do think that, to your point about it's hard to decouple, right? I do think that one is so, linked to the other, because generational and younger generation and their attitude towards technology is so different, that the availability that now you have. And it's interesting that you brought up the comment about independent analysts and what we make available externally. That is because of technology. When I left Gartner in 2013, the world was still very much through traditional channel. That's how you were sharing your voice. And then as I left the big corporate machine and had to find a way to make sure that my voice was still available to the market, then I turned to technology, and I turned to social media in particular, to be able to share those views and those opinions. So yeah, I think that you're absolutely right, that everything is all intertwined. I mentioned AI briefly, and I'm curious, as we obviously AI and data analytics have been around for a long time, but now we are at on the cusp of this big revolution with generative AI. And I'm curious how you're thinking about taking advantage of AI from an ARInsights perspective within your services.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that is a question that we very recently asked ourselves, right? Because this whole AI push is, like, in terms of being available across the board, like, what, 2 years now? It's been a very short time. And so when we thought about AI, in terms of our platform, we really thought about how can we enhance the experience of our users, and where do they need the most help. So a lot of our tools today have to do with notes summarization, the things that humans have a hard time with. I know I sound like I'm probably giving you some talk track from some AI vendor, but it really is how we were thinking about it. Like, how can we help summarize these, long briefings or inquiries that are taking place, and boil it down to a couple of main things that need to either go out to the business or share, as to what the analyst is thinking. Additionally, like, sometimes we need help writing the intro of a newsletter, right? It's like, this is kind of what I want to talk about. Give me that first pass, and break my writer's block. And then finally, the other big thing that AR pros really have to deal with is there's a sea of analysts that are saying great things. And so, how do we navigate around that? So, we also take, again, what's publicly available from the analysts and say, hey, this analyst has these topics that they've been talking about in this time frame, and here's the sentiment in these sort of business categories, right? Because we always hear, like, who should I work with? And I'll just throw a term out there in regards to semiconductors. I think we all know who the big semiconductor player is, but something like that. And to be able to see, oh, this analyst has been talking about these areas, and they're very positive on this, and not that great on this other thing. That can be really helpful in the strategic value that AR people are bringing back to the business through their alignment with the right analysts.
Yeah, I agree with your view, as far as, for me, AI is, there's a lot to your point about sounding like a marketing person from an AI firm. Is a time saver, is about doing things better, faster, maybe in a different way than I used to. So I'm looking at really learning different way of executing my workflow, because I think that, if we're just trying to cut corners, I think we're doing AI a great disservice, because there's so much more opportunity out there. I want to shift a little bit the discussion in a selfish way to my job security going forward as an analyst in this new world. I love what you said about relationship. And I, jokingly, I said, this is why I'm not worried about AI. But in a serious way, I do think that sometimes we get concerned about AI taking over all the jobs and we forget about how AI will never, yes, it will be more efficient than we are. It will be able to scale more than we are. But that human connection and interaction is not going to be there. Even my 16-year-old wrote an essay about why something that a human is writing versus something that an AI is writing. The AI piece might be more effective from a data perspective, from a historical context perspective, anything that you can research, but it's not going to be able to use words that actually connect with the reader. And I thought that was, first of all, very insightful, and I'm kind of very proud mama. But that's true. And I think it speaks so much about the role that as an analyst I have of really connecting with people. Where do you see my role going? Where do you see the role of the analyst going based on your view of the market, but also the kind of questions that you have, AI leaders asking you over the past, say, 12 months?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that the role of the independent analyst is so important. I love the fact that independent analysts make information available and friendly, and then opens the door, right, of the value of this human delivering very thoughtful and insightful information that we need to make big investments. I don't think the analyst is going away. I think that as long as humans are still buyers, we still want to hear from another human what the experience was. I mean, we still have hallucinations, right? Where things are not exactly as they seem, right? And even if that goes away, you know, humans are interacting with the technologies. So I really just don't see like the whole enterprise buyer journey changing in a way where you and I are not involved. We still have to think about um how does this work, for an actual person. I mean, because we're never going to not exist. So it'd be very strange. Or maybe my mind just can't think that way. So I really don't see the enterprise buyer just reading a review or reading a response to from a chatbot to make these types of giant investments that enterprise buyers are doing. Maybe if I was buying a home computer, but even my home computer for an individual is a hefty investment. Even a TV or a phone these days, right? I think we're all very cautious about what we read because we want to know that there's someone with a human cognitive ability that can, because, you could say that AI has a cognitive ability to some degree, but like a human that can say like this brought me joy, right? And I think that is what your very, very smart 16-year-old was inferring, is that there is an emotion to
Correct.
buying something that, even my unsavory experience was emotional, right? And like if you don't get that from a chatbot or, something that they could deliver to tell us what to do, I think it's less compelling.
Yeah, I agree. I always go back when I talk about this aspect of AI collaborating with human versus AI versus human. And I go back to the movie Hidden Figures. And there's a moment before I forget the name of the actor, goes on outer space. They obviously used the IBM supercomputer to calculate the trajectory. And he says he wants one of the mathematicians to actually check the course and the data. And he says, you cannot trust a machine. Like, you cannot look a machine in the eyes and trust it. And I think that that's what AI is, right? To your point, like that human connection, that I'm betting X amount of millions of dollars in an investment for whatever it is that I'm buying for so many employees across my organization. Do I actually trust a chatbot that just gave me an answer? Maybe not. The other side of my work, so I'm excited that you think I'm going to be around for a while, but now the other part is this influencer pool. I've not been a fan of the word influencer for a long time, until I was having a chat with my good friend Regina Oshimi at Google, who I know you know. Mm-hmm. And she very directly, as she does, said, well, stop getting hung up on the negative connotation that some people have around the word influencer, and start thinking about the voice that you have that does influence stakeholders, whether they're internal or external. And that was like, she's 100% right. And so I think that over time, and I don't even know why and how we got there, that word is being tainted a little bit, but the impact is real. How do you think, especially in the business side of things, there are business influencers? How do you see that role changing over time? And how even do you think it came about? Because people don't think about it in that way. That it's easy to see Marquez or, Justine on the consumer side of things as creators influencing consumers, but people don't think about that within an IT and corporate setting. But you do, because you cover analysts and business influencers.
And in fact, I will geek out just a little bit with you on this. I did not like it either. You have this, and it's not that there's anything wrong with the consumer influencer in terms of like social media. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, good on them, right? It literally created a new profession, if you will. I think where the hang up comes is in the enterprise sort of world. You want to be taken seriously because this is like, it's big bucks getting spent on technology, right? And so you don't want the value of your insight and your life's work to be boiled down to a 30-second reel, right? But I think when you bring that out of that context and you say, influencer is a categorization of a type of profession that is making impacts on buyers and also sellers, right? Because it's a two-way conversation to the sellers about what the market is looking for, because you have that connection to the buyer. And so I think one of the big catalysts for this was actually COVID, because it was around that time that specifically, and maybe I'm wrong because I have my tunnel vision of AR pros, but the AR world started to get a little fuzzy because, Carolina, your job got a little fuzzy, as well as every other analyst in the world, where there was a very fine line between consulting, advising, and analyst work and writing research. And you started to see this blur, I think, across the board, and even AR teams were blurring of who they were interacting with to drive the strategic value that anybody with enterprise influence could be making on their business. And it's really important for tech vendors to have a grasp on who is influencing their business, who can provide insights to the buyer profiles and what they want and need. Because nobody can just do what they want in a vacuum, right? So I really think that in that COVID period where we were all glued to our screens because outside was closed, I think that was the catalyst to blurring a lot of lines across the board. And I love what Regina said, because so much is right here. And how do we decide to think about something? So I had to practice that myself. And I think influencer as a top level of all of these different roles that one could play in the buyer journey, I'm okay with it now.
I'm okay with it too, and I could not agree more. And to be clear as well, I do think that the advent of these creators has raised the bar for analysts as well, because they do bring is as much as and maybe because I've been doing more of it, as much as people trivialize the 60-second reel, it's actually hard to try and land a message in such a short period of time, and a message that can get people to say, oh, I'm going to go and look into this, or for me sometimes it's like, I'm going to go and read the article that she wrote, or whatever the case might be. But it has raised the bar because of the passion that they have for technology and the amount of time that they invest in the production that they deliver, has put some pressure on some of the analysts. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to everything that we've done, and I know we're at time, but I want to ask you this because I'm really curious. How do you see your role as ARInsights evolving? As we talked about how everything is changing around us. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, we were largely seen in the past as a database, right? And some tools to help relationship management stuff. But now we're really starting to transform and think about ourselves as a data company to drive business results, which you may say, well, Crystal, that's just a different way of saying exactly what you just said. But I think there is a difference, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's when you leverage the data that you have to help empower and really create momentum for your customer that you become a data company. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a little different. It's
Yeah,
like
a
providing.
database doesn't deliver outcome. A database is more of a passive, if you like, kind of a deliverable versus bringing that data to life for a company, for a customer. Yeah, I get
Exactly.
you.
So thank you for giving me the words that I don't have. And this is why I really enjoy you. But yeah, that is exactly where I see our company moving forward. And that's primarily because there is so much data and humans cannot get through all of it. It's providing the tools, providing the insight for the AR person to navigate and decide what is going to be the best pathway to the goals that they need to help drive.
I love that. And I love you. And I'm very grateful that you found the time to join me today.
Yeah.
And where can people find you to find out more about what ARInsights does? And even if you're just curious about what is it that I do on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis.
So the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Crystal Golightly. There's not too many of us in the world, believe it or not. You can find me there and, send me a request, and I would be happy to connect and continue this conversation if you like.
Thank you so much, Crystal. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I look forward connecting with you in real life.
Great. Thank you.